All right, everybody, welcome in. It's the 2022 off season. We are looking at the Kansas City Chiefs again, and specifically we're looking at the defensive backs, that secondary, and there are questions all over the place. Thank you so much for being with us. Not to be confusing, but if you're looking at the board behind me, that's from a draft video I did on Ikem Ekwonu. He's the left tackle for NC State. You can find that over on my other YouTube channel, Sports and Money Pro Football GM. I keep that separate from the Kansas City stuff because I try to devote a lot of this stuff to the Chiefs. Once again, and again, I'm doing so much this offseason with the In the Flat podcast and with the other YouTube channel. I don't so much have a roadmap to success for the Chiefs offseason this year as I am just kind of laying out the options. And honestly, the more I look at the options the Chiefs have, the less I like it, man, the less comfortable I am with it. And the reason for that is it's just tight. It's kind of like being in an elevator with 12 other people. It's just tight. It's a little awkward. And as a matter of fact, we've gone beyond awkward to where it's a little uncomfortable. And that's what's happening to the Chiefs right now. The Chiefs are facing decisions because of the huge contracts that they have. And I'm not criticizing those. I'm just stating what is a fact. The Mahomes contract, which is large. The Chris Jones contract, which is large. Those two alone make things crowded. Okay, that's the crowded elevator. And then you add some of the other contracts that they have that we've already discussed on other videos. The Chiefs just have a lot of decisions that are kind of crowded. And if you do one thing, for instance, if you re-sign Tyrann Mathieu, that probably means Charvarius Ward is gone. So that's a decision you kind of have to make. If you were to re-sign Orlando Brown to a heavy contract, it probably means Tyrann Mathieu is gone, Charvarius Ward is gone. And again, that's a decision you have to make. Even letting go of Frank Clark and Anthony Hitchens, if that's what they ultimately decide to do, there are decisions to make, and no matter what you do, you keep coming back to this, that it's crowded, it's a little uncomfortable, it's a little awkward, and the decisions aren't easy. And oh, by the way, we haven't won that second Super Bowl yet. So do we go all in? Do we do the Rams thing here, go all in for 2022 and say the heck with 23 and 24? We want that second Super Bowl right now, so let's just restructure the heck out of everything and just burn up that 23 cap or that 24 cap, okay? There's a lot to consider here, and I'm not so much right now today, I don't even have all this pieced together. I'm not so much showing up with my little roadmap for success as I am laying out the options. And I'll throw in my opinions here and there. But again, I'm still just kind of trying to piece together some of this mentally in my own head about what I want to do. One of the other things that comes into play is this year's draft. This year's draft is interesting. It looks like, to me, as I look at the draft, it looks like the last part of the first round where the Chiefs are picking, where they normally pick, it looks like they're going to have the ability to choose from multiple edge rushers maybe and multiple wide receivers that I like, and I would assume the Chiefs like some of them. Doesn't look like they're going to have as many defensive backs to choose from that I personally like. It's not that they won't have any choices, but not as many as I would like. It looks like there's more edges and more wide receivers right there at that late first round area than maybe there are offensive tackles or secondary players. So that comes into it as well, and that's one of the reasons why I'm not coming in as hot this year, because there's just a lot more to think about, because the Chiefs just don't have as much room this year as they've had the past couple of seasons. And that was expected. You guys have known that for quite a bit of time. All right, let's go through the defensive backs one by one. We'll at least hit those. And these are their names, okay? Mathieu, Ward, Sneed, Fenton, Hughes, Baker, Thornhill, Watts, Sorenson. I think those are 9 guys right there. Those are the main names that we need to know and talk about. There's a few others on the roster. I don't see them making a heavy contribution in 2022 unless one of them surprises us and gets 200, 300 snaps that we're just not expecting. Tyrann Mathieu, he's the guy right at the start. That's one of the biggest decisions, if not the biggest, for Kansas City this year. He's a free agent. He's looking for a brand new contract. I've already heard little bits and pieces, rumors that maybe he's already gone. Maybe that's just not going to happen. But for now, let's assume that the Chiefs are still in play, and let's assume that Matthew still wants to come back. His last contract was 3 years, $42 million. The first year was kind of a bargain, $5 or $6 million. Year two hiked up to about $14-15 million, which was right there at the top of the safety pay scale in football. And then year three, the year he just came off of, was like $19.5 million, which put him at the top of the safety payroll by a pretty healthy amount. I think him and Collins from Washington, but they had lapped everybody else in terms of cap hit for 2021. So here's the stuff to think about with Tyrann Mathieu. He is going to be 30 by the time the next season rolls around. He will have, I think, 8 or 9 seasons already under his belt. I forget the exact number. That's the time that defensive backs start to, and NFL players in general, all NFL players, that's about the time you start to see an increase in injuries. And that's about the time you start to see them lose a step speed-wise. And those two things kind of cycle viciously on NFL players. It doesn't matter as much for some of the edge rushers, some of the offensive linemen, some of the quarterbacks, some of the defensive tackles. It doesn't matter as much. But for some of the wide receivers, some of the defensive backs, some of the running backs for sure, this starts to matter. The fact that you're playing season number 9 or 8, whatever it is, season 10, and the fact that you've crossed that 29 or 30-year-old mark, that matters. Even for the good players, that's a number that matters. The injuries start to come a lot more often, and the performance starts to go downhill a little bit, and it's a vicious cycle. Now, Tyrann Mathieu may have 3 more good seasons to play where he's at the top of his game, but we don't know that, and that's something you have to take into account. If you're going to sign a guy to a multi-year deal where the first couple of seasons are guaranteed and they're locked in. So let's say, for instance, that Mathieu was willing to sign another 3-year, $42 million contract, which he may not be. He might be looking for 3 years and $60 million. I don't know. I don't know what he and his agent have decided that their asking price is. But let's assume 3 years, $42 million for Tyrann Mathieu, which is just what he just came off of. That would keep him right there at the top of the safety payroll, or right there toward the top of the safety payroll. I would be interested in that, especially if I could put the guarantee at, say, $17, $20 million, where I'm not on the hook for 24 of it, or, you know, practically guaranteed, quote unquote, 32 of it. I would be interested in 3 years, $42 million, if I wasn't having to guarantee any more than about the first season. And that basically means if season 2 rolls around, 2023, and he's had an injury, and he looks like he's lost a step, and I'm not sure that he's ever going to be the same Tyrann Mathieu that we've all known and loved for the past 3 seasons. I'm not on the hook for that. I'm not having to guarantee 2023 at $14, $16 million a season. Now, I don't want to do that. As long as I'm not having to guarantee year 2 and year 3, I'm okay with another, significant cap hit, $14, $15 million for 2022. I'm okay with a backloaded contract like the one he just had. Again, as long as, and this is the kicker, this is the absolute line in the sand, as long as I'm not having to guarantee year 3 of that contract, and as long as I'm only on the hook for about maybe 40% of year 2, there's no way, just no way that I can guarantee all of year 2 and any part of year 3 for that contract. I just can't do it. Imagine this, and it's not unusual. We sign him, and we're paying out, who knows, $14, $15 million a year, and he's sitting on the bench with an injury, and he's out for the year. That's a huge cap number, and you're here trying to pick up Super Bowl number 2 in the Andy Reid era, in the Patrick Mahomes era, and one of the guys that you were counting on, that you tossed a lot of money at, is now sitting on the bench. And that's just something that has to be considered, right? So at 3 years, $42 million, I'm interested, but it's about how much I have to guarantee. I'll guarantee year 1, no problem, no big deal. But anything beyond that, we're talking very little am I going to guarantee past that. Now, if he's up there at 3 years, $20 million a season, and again, I don't know that he is. I'm not saying that he is. But if that's what he's trying to get after, I'm basically out on that. because with that, he's probably also going to want about $40 million of that guaranteed. So no chance. I'm not saying some other team will offer him that. And I'm not saying that he might not be worth that to somebody. But for Kansas City, trying to reach that second Super Bowl, or win that second Super Bowl, there's just no way that we're going to lock down on Tyrann Mathieu at 3 years, 3 years, $60 million, which is 20 per season. No way we can do that. So that's about where that sits. I'm very much inclined to just letting Tyrann Mathieu go altogether. And again, nobody wants to let go of Tyrann Mathieu. Nobody, okay? We love Mathieu. Everybody loves Mathieu, okay? Mathieu is athletic. Mathieu's a ball hawk. Mathieu's a playmaker. Mathieu's good in the box. Mathieu's solid in coverage. Mathieu is all over the football field. Mathieu's a leader. We love Tyrann Mathieu, okay? Unmistakably. Nobody wants to let him go. But the money and the age are things that we have to consider. And when you do, you start to sit back and start to think about, what else can we do with that money? Well, let's go to Charvarius Ward. This is something else you can do with the money. The big question here is, Ward is a free agent. The big question here is, how much money can he make in free agency? And is that a price we want to match? And once again, if you re-sign Tyrann Mathieu, basically cap space wise, you're probably not going to invest that money in Charvarius Ward. Even if you had it, you're probably not going to double down at defensive back with those kinds of cap hits. So that's probably, but let's assume Mathieu is gone and we're looking at Charvarius Ward right now and we're wanting to bring him back because he's not a dominant defensive back. He's not a super speed kind of a guy. He does struggle at times with tall receivers, but he's a solid defensive back. He's done a solid job the past couple of seasons. He's not afraid to go up against anybody. He loves one-on-one matchups. He's not the greatest in zone, but when you put him in one-on-one, he's very competitive. He makes quarterbacks work very hard to get the ball to the man he's covering. Love Charvarius Ward. I desperately want him back, but what's the price tag? If you roll over to, say, Spot Track, and they do a fine job, the price tag is going to be just under $10 million a season. 4-year deal, $40 million, $9.5, $10 million a season. I think that sounds a little high. I'm not sure he's going to get that, but if he does, more power to him. I don't think Kansas City, if I were Kansas City, I probably wouldn't be in on that. If I can get Charvarius Ward for, say, 3 years at $8 million a season, I think I'm in on that. I think I feel pretty good about that. He's still, I think, on the younger side of his career. Even if he doesn't develop, I like what I already have there. He's a good, solid defensive back. I can put him on almost anybody, and while he won't shut them down, he will make them work. And that's worth a lot in the NFL, especially when you're trying to win that second Super Bowl. That's worth a lot. So I think if it's 3 years, $24 million, I think I'm in the game, especially if I've let Tyrann Mathieu go. On the flip side, if he's starting to climb towards 4 years and $40 million, and again, that's not a huge difference. We're starting to kind of split hairs here, but I think that's the time that I'm going to start kind of sliding out and letting the other teams kind of take a look at it there. So that's what I'm looking at right there. Let me know what you guys think about Charvarius Ward. I really want him back. They're probably not going to be able to keep both Ward and Tyrann Mathieu. Legeris Sneed. This is where it gets interesting, and I mentioned this in an earlier video, I think before the season even started. Legeris Sneed is back this year. He's at $1.1 million, okay? He won't be a free agent until 2024, so you got him for 2 more seasons. Sneed is so athletic. Sneed's not the greatest cover guy in the world. I personally have a plan in mind that I think I would like to see him moved to safety. And you'll have Juan Thornhill back there. We'll get to Thornhill in a second. Legeris Sneed played safety for a couple of years in college at Louisiana Tech. They had some injuries there. He was a cornerback. He moved to a safety for Louisiana Tech to help them out. Played a ton of safety in college. Did very well at it. It's really one of the reasons he got drafted in. Well, Kansas City gets him and they bump him right back to defensive back. But Legeris Sneed has the athleticism, he has the intellect, he has the experience to play safety at an NFL level. And oh, by the way, this is what really seals the deal for me. Legeris Sneed, we saw him this year make a lot of tackles in the running game. Out in the flat, running backs catching the ball out in the flat, or running backs running the ball out to the flat. That's kind of an island out there. There were a lot of plays where Legeris Sneed had to make the tackle or nobody else was going to. It was going to go for 10, 15, 30 yards if Sneed didn't make the tackle. And time after time, Sneed in these one-on-one situations with running backs made these tackles. So he's got that ability as a safety to ball hawk. He's got the ability athletically to cover some. He's got the ability to work in the box. He's especially got that ability to make plays out there in the flat as a safety. And this isn't his first year in the NFL anymore, all right? He's already got, I think, 2 seasons now in the NFL. And I would be very interested in seeing Sneed get a chance to move to safety if Tyrann Mathieu is gone. I think that gives them a chance. Is he going to play as good as Mathieu? Probably not. Mathieu's pretty good safety, okay? Mathieu isn't the best safety in football, but Mathieu's a pretty good safety. Made All-Pro a couple of seasons ago and deserved it. But Legeris Sneed, I think, can step in and do a good, solid job at safety, and especially as he gets more experience at the NFL level at doing that. So that's something I'm very interested. I don't know that the Chiefs are going to do that. They may look at that and say, no way, all right? So I don't know. They may not like that at all, but that's something I would be looking at. I don't think you're going to miss Sneed's coverage ability at defensive back, because I don't think he's a great defensive back in coverage, all right? He can cover decent, but he's not as good in coverage as Rashaad Fenton. He's not as good in coverage as Charvarius Ward. And I think he'll do better at safety than he even will do at defensive back. He's competitive. He's trying at defensive back, but I think a move to safety looks better for him. Now, that leaves you with Juan Thornhill at the other safety spot. Thornhill will be making $3.1 million. Again, a real steal there, not much money tied up. Thornhill still isn't back to what he was before the injury, but he looked fine at safety this year. Good, solid safety back there, did a good, solid job. Now, he didn't make a lot of huge plays, not a lot. You didn't see him kind of all over the field making the same kind of plays that he made before he got hurt last season, but still, I think Thornhill plays a good, solid safety back there, and I think you compare him with Sneed, and then you have $4.2 million tied up in the safety spot, and I think you have a good, solid set of safeties back there. Not All-Pro level, probably not even Pro Bowl level, but I think you have good, solid, quality starters there at safety. It's something worth thinking about, to say the least. Rashaad Fenton, he's coming back this year. Love Rashaad Fenton. Can't say enough good things about Fenton, man. All right, Fenton was bringing it last year. I don't think Fenton is an All-Pro defensive back, but Fenton moved from covering slot receivers in 2020 to where he was covering the big boys. He was covering the big guys in 2021 and did an excellent job of it. Once again, he wasn't shutting them down necessarily, but he was making them all work, every single one of them, and he knows it. He's good and he knows it, okay? Rashaad Fenton is good at what he does and he knows it. Now, again, I'm not sure that he's an All-Pro or a Pro Bowler necessarily. I think he's got shots at Pro Bowl, but man, he makes these guys work. These receivers know when they show up and they have to line up against Rashaad Fenton, they are having to work the entire game. And it's not easy to catch these passes off Fenton. The quarterback's got to work, and that's important. He's coming in at $2.6 million this year. So again, you don't have much money tied up. That's important. You've got a quality starter in Rashaad Fenton, and a guy who might make Pro Bowl next year as well. Excellent, excellent guy there. No matter what you do with Fenton, if you keep him on the big guys, the big receivers, the outside receivers, or if you kick him back in the slot, no matter what, you've got options there with Fenton. You have options there with Sneed. And that gives you, with just Sneed and Fenton and Thornhill, you have right there 3 quality starters coming back, no matter where you end up having to put them. Baker, I'm not inclined to bring Baker back at defensive back. I think he played 200 snaps last year. I didn't see enough there. Matter of fact, more often than not, I was seeing him kind of get beat on a lot of plays downfield, so I'm inclined to not bring Baker back. Wouldn't cost much, $850,000. I'm inclined to not bring him back. Armani Watts. Watts is an interesting guy. Drafted 4 years ago now, I think. He's a free agent. Wouldn't cost much. Cost $1 million to bring him back. He doesn't play much on defense, hasn't for his whole time there with the Chiefs, but he's contributed on special teams. He's all over special teams. 286 snaps at special teams. So really, if you bring Armani Watts back, it has nothing to do with money. It has nothing to do with defense. It's just a question of do the Chiefs coaching staff value him enough in special teams to bring him back for $850,000, $900,000, something like that, or to let him go. Financially, it makes no difference either way. If he's gone, somebody else will just have to step in and play special teams. So I'll be interested to see what the coaches do with that. Dan Sorensen. This is a touchy name for a lot of you guys, okay? And I know it, okay? Sorensen is a guy who has made a handful of big plays for the Chiefs over the year and has messed up quite a bit for the Chiefs over the years. The reason he messes up is because they've asked too much of him. I still don't know why. Maybe they can explain it to me someday or maybe not. I don't care. I still don't know why they had him playing so much at safety at the start of the season instead of Juan Thornhill. Who knows? Water under the bridge. Sorensen should not have been doing that. Sorensen's a good guy to have as a backup. He's the guy that comes in when somebody else is injured. And you know, A, he's not as athletic as the guy he's replacing, but B, he's smart. C, he's hardworking. He knows where everybody on the field is supposed to be. He knows where he's supposed to be. And there's value in that. How much? For me, it's about $1 million. That's it. He also plays on special teams. He has 151 special teams snap. He had 700 snaps on defense last year. There's no way that Sorensen should be playing 700 snaps on defense in any season, even as a backup. He's the guy you bring in when somebody else is hurt. You play him for two or three weeks, and then he goes back to the bench and he contributes on special teams and he contributes with knowledge. Sorensen's a smart guy, but they are asking too much of him. And if they're going to keep asking too much of him, then they might as well just let him go and bring in somebody off the street who's more athletic, okay? Because there's a lot of guys who are more athletic, but they won't bring in that many guys who know where everybody on the field is supposed to be, because he knows, all right? He's got that experience. So I'm inclined to actually let Sorensen go, but if they bring him back at $1 million, you can't beat the experience. You can't beat the fact that he knows where everybody on the field is supposed to be, himself included. He knows the defensive alignments. For $1 million, it's worth it to bring him back. If he wants more than that, or if the Chiefs just decide to part ways anyway because it's been kind of a controversial thing, I totally understand that. Don't really even have a position on that, to be honest. I think the only guy that I haven't covered yet is Mike Hughes. Hughes is an interesting guy. He'll be a free agent. I think he's an unrestricted free agent, if I remember right. If that's not correct, toss it in the comments. He was $1.8 million last year. Hughes wasn't awful, but Hughes got beat a lot. There were a lot of big plays where Hughes just wasn't able to lock down. If they bring him back at $1 million, I'm okay with it. You're probably not going to find a guy. You might find a guy in the draft, but you'll not find a guy in the 7th round or an undrafted free agency who's going to be more athletic than Mike Hughes and who is also going to know the system. So Hughes at least knows your system for $850,000. He also played 164 special teams snaps, so he's willing to do that. If you bring him back at $1 million, $900,000, something like that, I'm all in favor of bringing Mike Hughes back. If he thinks he can make more money somewhere else, maybe he can. I kind of doubt it. If he thinks he makes some more money somewhere else, I'm not going to offer him more money than that. If they decide to start pulling in a lot of guys off the street as undrafted free agents for defensive back, which they may do anyway, I understand that too. But bringing Hughes back is something I'm interested in. Okay, so very quickly, let me wrap up here. Tyrann Mathieu, I'm inclined to let go, but somewhere around 3 years, $42 million. If I only have to guarantee the first season, I'm interested in that. Travarius Ward, I really want to bring back. At 3 years and $24 million, I think I like to be in. If that number starts to climb on up because we're bidding against other teams, I think I'm out, even though I love Ward. Sneed is back for $1.1 million. Fenton is back for $2.6 million. Hughes, I'm inclined to bring back for $1 million. Baker, I'm inclined to let go. Thornhill is back for the cheap price of $3.1 million. Watts, I'm inclined to bring back for about hopefully under $1 million to play special teams. And then Sorenson, I think I'm inclined to let go. All right, I was going to cover the draft and defensive backs in relation to that, but I think I'm just going to create a separate video for that. So anyway, thank y'all so much for watching. Right now I'm going to turn it right back around and make another video about just a little bit about the draft and the defensive backs and stuff like that you might see late in the first round. All right, thank you. Bye.